Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. 2025 is right around the corner, and there's going to be some significant shifts in our economy and the financial system worldwide. How do we prepare for this, and what are the key things that we need to be on guard against as the world is going through its next iteration of history? Let's get started. Thanks for joining me today. If you're new on the channel, here on the Patriot Nurse channel, we talk about preparedness with a lens to history and an eye towards the present through the current events that we get every day in our news feed. So friends, if you have grown up in the West, you have effectively enjoyed en masse, even if not personally in your own circumstance, you have enjoyed the prosperity that has come as a result, really, of the victories of the Allies over the Axis in World War II. And a lot of those benefits that we have come to enjoy and that we have come to view as commonplace, they are shifting rapidly away, and the very things that our prosperity was founded upon are evaporating right in front of our very eyes. There are four key things that I want to drive home today as realities to look at materializing in 2025 that we need to be on guard against, and I'm going to share with you how I'm preparing personally. The first key point that we need to be aware of and guard against is the expansion and the rise of BRICS. Now, when I say on guard against, I'm not necessarily saying that people shouldn't be advocating for their own best interests. Every nation state is going to advocate in its own best interest. But if you have been on the prosperous end and are looking towards the poverty end of history, circling back your way, probably is in your best benefit to look at these things and to shield against their reality. So BRICS is effectively the biggest competitor. It is the Pepsi to the Coke of the United States dollar. And BRICS is gaining power and it's gaining members. As a matter of fact, almost 50% of the world's population will be represented by BRICS. In 2025, 9 new nations are signing on board to BRICS, and this relatively represents about 41% of the GDP for the entire planet. That is a staggering competitor for the United States dollar. Now, we have enjoyed the United States dollar being the global reserve currency since two things: the implementation of the Marshall Plan, and number two, the Bretton Woods Agreement, which founded all of these mega alphabet organizations that mess with our money supply, including the IMF and the World Bank. But once the United States got its power as the global reserve currency, people basically stuck to it until 1971, wherein we unhooked from the gold standard. But at that time, there was really no better competitor and really no alternative for people to glom onto to transact internationally. So they're effectively stuck with us, debasing our currency through inflation as a fiat currency, and as all fiat currencies do, they eventually debase their currency into nothing. With the emergence of BRICS and the global power that it represents, this is potentially a very formidable opponent to the United States dollar. And not only that, this is an alternative to many nations who do not like the escapades and the foreign adventurism that the United States has been involved in over the past 30 years for sure. And so when you look at BRICS gaining power, this is, from a competition standpoint, a very significant threat to the global reserve status of the United States dollar. And how this impacts us here, stay tuned to the end of the video to find out. Number two in our list of things to strategically prepare for in 2025 are the tariffs and potential trade wars that we are looking at in the United States. Now, regardless of your perspective on President Trump and tariffs, etc., this is not an action without historical precedent. We know what happens when tariffs are implemented, and that is that in the best case scenario, eventually after many cycles of time, labor comes back to the nation, industry comes back that had been outsourced, for instance, the industries that we lost with NAFTA, etc. But in the interim, there are a few things that are very realistically going to hit the pocketbook of people here at home in an area that already too many people are reeling from, and that is the grocery bill. When you look at the tariffs that President Trump is planning to place on Mexico and on Canada, this is more than just, of course, vehicles that are being made and the jobs that have been lost through labor outsourcing that way. If you look at your grocery bill, particularly if you buy produce out of season and non-locally, you're going to note that a great deal of your produce is coming from Mexico and Canada. And so at a time when many people are struggling to not only pay their grocery bill, hence the emergence of apps that specifically are targeted to pay your grocery bill on a payment plan, many people are going to be faced with an increase in cost of goods if these tariffs are implemented and if they go into full effect. So a practical key point here is to do what we've talked about on this channel for so many years, the beans, bullets, and band-aids. If you are noting that you are purchasing things that are coming from Mexico and things that are coming from Canada, you may want to try to find a workaround from a local brand or learn how to make that product, that food product yourself, or potentially try and grow it. But again, the challenge is if you are, for instance, in the middle of Minnesota, getting fresh organic raspberries is probably not going to be a thing for you, and probably not getting those blueberries either. They're either coming from Mexico or the blueberries are probably coming from Chile. So friends, this is something that we're probably going to have to get used to for the short term if these tariffs go through. Higher cost for bringing in fruits and vegetables, including fresh fruits, nutrifying fruits and vegetables from out of the country at a higher premium. Another thing to consider from the tariffs is that China is notorious for playing games with their own currency. And when you look at the way that tariffs are paid, they're usually paid in the currency of the country imposing those tariffs. So in order for China to pay the tariffs, they would first have to convert their yuan into United States dollars. And that's kind of a free-for-all because, for instance, if you're a government like China, who has historically played games with their currency to get an edge with the rest of the world, which of course is fairly commonplace, they're going to keep doing it. So we could get into a situation where China plays games with their currency in order to nullify the effects of the tariffs. Combined with the reality of the BRICS emergence and China potentially playing games with their currency, this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back for the global financial system to have the house of cards come toppling down. And when that happens, there's going to be a winner that emerges from it. What do you think could happen with this? Do you think that tariffs are going to help the United States economy, or do you think that it could kick off a trade war or a currency crisis that ultimately sinks the financial system globally? Let me know in the comments below. The third thing that I want to point out is the trend towards de-dollarization internationally. Ever since the trade sanctions that were imposed on Russia, thanks Biden administration in 2022, the rest of the world has been kind of taking note of, if we hold your money and then you block our ability to use that money and then you freeze our assets of that money internationally, why should we do business with you in the first place? It's a good question. The rest of the world, particularly the world that doesn't like the United States and that's not a fan of our foreign policy and that doesn't like our allies for sure, they are looking to dump the dollar in a way that A, is not going to debase the value of their savings, but B, is going to give them better purchasing power and also more options. If BRICS continues to put pressure on the United States' position as a global reserve currency, we could indeed see major inflationary pressures here on the United States dollar, and that could affect also the Treasury bond yields. And so that whole market could be significantly affected by an increase in volatility right at a time when most people are broke to begin with. So one of the trends that you may have been seeing in the news is that many nation states are moving to adopt cryptocurrency and specifically Bitcoin as a reserved status to prop up their own currencies. Not only has El Salvador done this, many other nations are looking to do this. President Trump has hinted that he may pursue some type of arrangement to get around the Federal Reserve. But this is a thing. A lot of nations are looking at their own currencies, seeing what's happening potentially with the rise of BRICS and also the potential for tariffs and trade wars with the United States. And they're saying, you know what? I need a middleman that's not associated with another nation state. Hello, Bitcoin. So I think you're going to see as this moves on throughout the next year that many, not only nation states, but also very large companies and investment firms are going to be looking to add large amounts of Bitcoin to their portfolio. And this leads me into the final point, which is Bitcoin as a global reserve asset for nation states, for large companies, and for individuals. One of the things that we've seen is that historically looking at what happens to fiat currencies, they always go to zero. Every nation that has ever adopted a fiat currency, which is essentially a currency that is not backed by something that is relatively stable, such as gold, like we used to until 1971, every currency that's done that, their currency has been reduced to nothing. And so who ends up holding the bag as a result of that? Do you think it's going to be the politicians? Do you think it's going to be the feudal lords and the oligarchs in places like, BlackRock headquarters and Vanguard? Please. The plebes end up holding the bag. That would be you and me. Pretty much anybody who is not rubbing elbows at Bilderberg and not, being chummy with friends at the World Economic Forum. Unless you're in that little club, you're going to be left holding the bag for all of their exploits. They have benefited from all of this, whether it's with their effectively free money and with their buying up houses, for instance, single-family houses. They have benefited from this, so we end up holding the bag. Now, the question is, how are we going to position ourselves to thrive, not just survive? Well, I'm not offering financial advice here, but I'm going to straight up tell you, I have been increasing the overall percentage of what I hold in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a result of this. And here's the point, friends. A lot of people who follow my channel, you may not be necessarily big on the idea of blockchain, and you may think necessarily that it's the devil and it's the newest form of evil. But this is the reality of the situation that we face. We are in an increasingly digital world, and we're not going back. Unless we have an EMP and everything shuts off, we are in a digital reality, and that may not be a good thing. That may be essentially tolerating an evil for the sake of convenience. But the reality is here. If you have ever purchased, for instance, a movie to watch online, you are part of that system of shifting from physical capital into digital capital. That is never going to change unless we have a complete reset on the system. And so as that reality draws more and more upon us, I think that it behooves us to really consider stratifying our holdings in such a way that we have some other possibility rather than depending upon the US dollar and, frankly, depending upon the competence of people managing our monetary supply. I have zero confidence in the federal government, and I don't care who the figurehead is in Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, there's a fairly famous CEO, Michael Saylor, who has been the poster child for large companies expanding their Bitcoin balance sheet. And Michael Saylor has spoken at many different conferences on the fact, but the reality of his viewpoint is that if you are not taking Bitcoin and adding it to your portfolio, you're getting eaten alive by inflation, and there's no way really to keep your money solvent. What do you think? Do you agree with Michael Saylor, or do you think that cryptocurrencies are the path to destruction for people? Do you think that companies should consider doing this? Do you think the federal government of the United States should consider adding Bitcoin and stable cryptocurrencies as part of their portfolio? Leave me a comment below. So now we get to the so what point of the video. The reality that we are facing in 2025 and certainly the next 2 years, I would say, forward is a very significant level of volatility, not only in the market, but also in world movements. I've been saying this for a long time. If you've been paying attention on the channel, you know this, that I fully believe that we are repeating the similar lead-up steps and are on the precipice of World War III because we look an awful lot like World War I. And the reason why I think this is not just because of the decoupling and the falling apart of alliances, but because of functionally insolvent money. You can't have stability when your money supply is insolvent, and that's what we're facing. You have multi-generational animosity building between people, particularly here in the United States, over housing issues and over the perception of vast chasms between the wealthy, the haves, and the have-nots. But all of this really, frankly, boils down to the issue of the monetary supply. We don't have good money. And if you don't have good money, you can't have peace. You certainly can't have stability. So whether it is the monetary supply that is affected, whether it is the ascendance of BRICS, whether it's the trade wars and the tariffs, whether it is the de-dollarization or the adoption internationally of Bitcoin as a reserve, we are going to see major moves here. So what does that mean for the little guy? What does that mean for your average person who's sitting there just hoping to pay the bills at the end of the month? Well, the reality is that everything is probably going to become much more expensive. And that's not what we wanted to hear, of course, because a lot of people cast their vote in the 2024 election for change. And not just change in the Delta sense, but change in the sense of what I hear jingling in my pocketbook. When you look at what happens to people who have their entire worldview upended and their standard of living debased because their currency is ultimately not solvent, you're going to see major shifts politically, economically, financially, in every aspect of people's lives. So that means that we need to double down on the beans, bullets, and band-aids. Let's break that down, the beans. We know that if these tariffs go through, that things coming from Mexico and Canada, particularly the agricultural products, unless otherwise negotiated, are going to burn us when we go to the grocery store. And a lot of people can't afford it as it is. So if you have the ability to pad your supplies of your stored foods, consider doing so, and also consider doing so in foods that you regularly buy from Mexico and Canada, places where, for instance, tariffs would increase the cost of buying those things. The second point that we should be aware of is that in times of economic uncertainty and upheaval, violence and crime tend to explode. And despite the fact that ABC liked to try and correct President Trump in the middle of the debate, which was hilarious in and of itself, they want to try and tell you that crime is down in the United States. Violent crime is not down in the United States, and it can't be when you have 12 million conservatively illegals who have come in here, who all of them have been unvetted and who have not been checked for criminal records, and in many cases are perpetrating heinous crimes just like the ones that we have seen recently, whether it was the murder of Laken Riley or most recently the murder and torching alive of a woman in the subway by a Guatemalan illegal. You're not going to have a more stable economy and a safer place to live until these people are out of here. And when things get slim from pickings on the grocery shelf, you can imagine that people are not going to be operating, shall we say, at their best. So for that reason, we must take self-defense seriously. We cannot rely upon a government to be there to defend us. And it's been said before, but I think it bears repeating, that when you need the police in seconds, they're only minutes away. The Band-Aids portion. One thing that we need to be aware of is that tariffs are going to affect not only the agricultural products coming from different places, but potentially the pharmaceutical products and also the medical supplies. It is going to become more expensive to get the medical supplies that you rely upon and potentially even medical care. And so for this reason, if you can, at all possible, increase your proficiency in self-care at home so that way, A, you don't have to risk going into the midst of flu season to an ER that's crowded with God knows how many people who are also infectious and sick. If you can decrease your dependency upon this by educating yourself, you're going to do better, you're going to be more confident, you're going to spend less money overall on caring for your family. Also, if you have the ability to pad your supplies, particularly things that you use quite a lot from a medical standpoint, if you can build up your supplies and keep a higher level of them on inventory, that's probably going to benefit you overall over the next year to 2 years. If you'd like to train with me, I have the option to train in either a 4 or a 7-hour course. The 4-hour course is a great way to dip your toe in. The 7 hours is really how to take what you've learned and catapult it forward to making your own herbal support tonics with the things that you see in nature around you. Also, if you're looking to get some medical supplies, we have on the website the Patriot Nurse Grab and Go medical kits. Great way to start. So friends, in a recap, 2025 is going to be filled probably with a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty, and we're going to see how it shakes out. But I anticipate some short-term pain for sure when it comes to the grocery bill and when it comes to medical bills, when it comes to effectively anything that requires utilizing supplies that come in from overseas. So friends, I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was helpful for you, please share it with one person in your friends or family group that you know would be similarly benefited from it. We need to be prepared. We need to be prepared not just so that we can sit on a stockpile and gloat over everyone else's misfortunes, but really to be prepared from a place of blessing. We want to be sitting on a hill. We want to be in a position so that way we don't have to be worrying and holding things close and white knuckles, but that we have an open hand to help with charity and with mercy people who need it in times of darkness. Friends, I hope this video was a blessing to you. If you did enjoy it, please subscribe here and click the bell button to make sure that you get all of the important updates. You can also support me on Patreon, Subscribestar, cryptocurrency, and PayPal. I have links below. I appreciate y'all. I hope you got something out of this video. May the Lord bless and keep you all. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.